Welcome to Almost Here, Round the Corner Future Technology podcast with Richard Jacobs. Future technologies poised to transform our lives for better or worse are the focus of this podcast. Almost here means these technologies are now here and starting to be used, or just around the corner, from Bitcoin to artificial intelligence, 3D printing, blockchain, virtual reality, and more.
Hello, this is Richard Jacobs with the Future Tech Podcast. My guest today is Tara Shimer. She's the founder and CEO of Keto Baking Co. So, Tara, how you doing?
I'm good. Thanks, Richard. How are you?
Good. Yeah. So tell me the story of Keto Baking Co. How did it come about? And, then we'll get into what you do right now.
Sure. So I have always, my whole life, I've always, we kind of play a round table, my family and I, of inventions and business ideas we have. It's always been something that even when I was a child, I was, allowed to participate in. It would be like the Thanksgiving dinner table, and that's what we'd be talking about. So I always knew I was going to start a business. I wasn't sure always what it would be, but I have always gravitated toward nutrition and as a alternative career and also just as biohacking for myself to try and be the healthiest I can be and increase longevity and all that sort of thing. So I stumbled upon the ketogenic diet about 3.5 years ago, a little longer than that, and I was astounded by how much credibility it already had. Medically and scientifically speaking. So I jumped right in and haven't looked back. From that and from the passion that I've gained overseeing it, profoundly transform my life as well as others.
How long have you been doing the diet personally, and what changes have you experienced personally?
So did you say how have I been doing the diet personally?
How long
and
have you
what,
been doing it?
What changes have I experienced? Oh, long. Okay,
right.
Yeah, 3.5 years it's been. I've never felt the need to stray, and I don't say that necessarily to gloat. It's more for the sake of any listener who thinks that it's too difficult. I like to say that I've never felt the need. And so I always hope for other people that want to make this a lifestyle change, that they don't feel that either. I guess, so for the last 3.5 years, I've, the benefits that I've seen have undulated a bit, but not so, most of them have not. Most of them have been consistent. And the main one being, the cognitive function being, just, I feel like my brain fires on all cylinders most of the time. I want to say, 80% of the time, unless I don't get enough sleep, or I'm too stressed out. So yeah, that's been that was kind of the hook, for me, because the first, I want to say 9 months of doing the diet, I didn't see any other, profound changes. I think my body had a lot of healing to do. But after 9 months, suddenly things began to change in terms of my physicality, my body composition, things like my inflammation markers, insulin resistance reversed, just sustained energy. My muscles seemed to recover quicker from after, working out in the gym.
Did you get did you get blood work done to mark your progress?
Oh, lots of blood work. The unfortunate thing is that I don't have a lot of blood work from pre-keto. I got into blood work, quickly after keto. So I have tons of labs, not just blood, but saliva, urine, stool. I have all the labs. I get them done. I shell out lots of money that I don't necessarily always have to spend, but I just make that a priority because I'm quite fastidious about that sort of thing. So yeah, would you like me to share any particular markers?
Yeah, right. What did you notice that changed over time as you took your blood work? Well, went up or down or sideways?
Well, the number one thing, and in fact, it was the sort of the catalyst that drove me to seek out a dietary change. I had been doing what I kind of refer to as like a lazy paleo. It was by no means as strict as the whole 30, but for about a year and a half, I had been doing, no grains, no sugar, not even like very minimal amounts of honey. And so even with that diet, I had somehow developed insulin resistance between 2015 and 2013, because I had blood work from 2013 where my fasting blood glucose was quite normal. It was around 80 or 78. Right. So fast forward to November of 2015, fast forward to November of 2014, I was seeing a gastroenterologist, and she informed me that my blood glucose was 177. And that was not fasted, but it was about 6 hours after I'd eaten last. And the last thing I'd eaten was half of a Quest bar. Yeah, and Quest bars are pretty darn low carb, even with their old formulation, which didn't include allulose. Pretty darn low carb. So 177, that was shocking. I immediately began to cry because I knew somehow, I think because growing up with a grandfather with type 2 diabetes, perhaps, I just somehow, knew that was a bad thing. And, from there, I just I plunged into a black hole of researching. And anyway, it took a few months, but after a few months of doing keto, pretty strictly, and when I say that, I mean, 80% fat, 15% protein, and 5% carbohydrate on a daily basis. My blood glucose began to be in the high 70s, low 80s. I was still pretty determined to see it get lower than that. So I just kept trying to play around with things and changed up my exercise. I had been a chronic cardio person, and once I began incorporating heavy weightlifting into my regimen, I began to see even further improved insulin resistance. So there's quite a synergy between the two. There's a few different lifestyle hacks that I had to make. Yeah, I cut out caffeine completely. Yep.
I guess the frustrating thing is the frustrating thing is you probably thought you were eating pretty well, but you had to eat, even better, or you had to be even stricter in order to get the results you wanted. So I'm sure that was super frustrating for you.
Yeah, on an emotional level, I have to say that's been still to this day is very frustrating, because sometimes you want to just be able to loosen up a little bit, especially because the climate, the social climate, wants you to. There's a lot of pressure just going out to events or going to dinner or going to someone's house for dinner to sort of just loosen up. Hey, why don't you just loosen up, Tara, just for a meal? And I have to put myself first. I have to prioritize my goals. And sometimes that happens at the expense of my relationships. Lots of people, view me as some kind of, friends, will say that they're scared to eat around me. And I don't know why, because I certainly don't say anything, but it's some kind of an intimidation factor or something, I guess. But I enjoy it.
Okay, well, good.
Mm-hmm.
Well, let's get into the Keto Baking Co. So, how did it lead to creating this company, and what kind of products do you make?
Yeah. Okay. So I have been an avid baker and cook my entire life. I created my first recipe when I was 3. So I've never been able to follow a recipe, but I like to make my own. So it kind of came naturally that one day I had made a snickerdoodle cookie dough, a ketogenic approved snickerdoodle cookie dough. And I was looking back now, I'm grateful for this, that I was sort of taking care of my 2 grandparents with, they both have dementia, Alzheimer's dementia. And my grandfather, he is a stickler for energy use in his old age. And so he didn't like to have the oven on. It was Memorial Day. That was the last year. And so I saw him in the kitchen, and I said, well, I guess I'll have to put this in the fridge. So I did that. And then 3 days later, I'd forgotten about that dough. And I wanted to make a granola recipe. And so I made that. And he wasn't downstairs in the kitchen that day. So I was free to bake. And I popped my head in the kitchen into the refrigerator, and noticed that dough was there. And I said, oh gosh, maybe this is going to go bad, or, maybe I won't have another opportunity. So I just decided to put the dough on top of the granola, because I'm also obsessed with efficiency. So that was pretty neat. It's a pretty neat thing to have come into play, because a lot of times it ends up, resulting in being overly efficient can result in, tossing away attention to detail or something. So to combine these two things, I put them in the oven, and it came out, and it was the best tasting thing I'd ever made. So I decided to take it to this Memorial Day picnic and feed it to a bunch of 30 people that I brought a notebook, and I took notes of everyone's response, 30 different people that didn't eat keto, and they all loved it. So they said, anyway. And that's when, that night I called my dad, and I said, hey, Dad, I've got this money that I've saved up, and my grandmother had gifted me some money as well, and I said I'd like to use it to start this company. And he said, go for it, because if you don't, you're going to regret it for the rest of your life. And I'd been looking for an excuse to start my own business for a long time. So the next day I filed my LLC, and it's been it's been hard work ever since, but
very cool.
So far it's been worth it.
So what's the premise of the company? It's just bake keto-friendly stuff and sell it, or is it something different from there?
Oh, yeah. Well, yes. That would be in a nutshell. It's right now we just have one product line, and that is, it stemmed from what I created that day. So it's called Grapal Cookie Granola. Grapal is like, kapow, but I took granola and combined it with kapow. So it's, the theme is sort of like comic booky. I say the tagline is a punch to the palate minus the sugar and the violence. And that's our first product line. We have 4 different flavors, which is the Snickerdoodle, the peanut butter and jelly thumbprint, which is a cookie I grew up with. And then there's the peanut butter cup and the salted caramel brownie. And I have lots and lots of ideas of other product lines. It's just a matter of, I don't have 12 hands, unfortunately. And so we're trying to roll those out as fast as possible, because I get very bored very easily. I'm always wanting to, launch something new.
Right,
so I have to kind of reel myself back. I have a partner now, I've had a partner since probably day 60, who kind of keeps me in line with that. And, but I hope to get to doing some savory stuff at some point.
So what does the profile of the Grapal and all that stuff look like versus, traditional granola or traditional stuff?
So traditional granola tends to be, a lot of it tends to be, if you're looking at old-fashioned granola, with the rolled oats and the honey, and then, like some kind of canola oil or some kind of oil, it tends to be both higher fat and very high carbohydrate. The protein is negligible. Our products are low carbohydrate, and of the 3 macronutrients, the fat is the highest, and then the protein is not, I don't want to say negligible, but I keep it low because the ketogenic diet advocates for a moderated protein level. So I thought it was best to keep it lower than even moderate, because that way, if someone, usually, like I know for me in my own diet, I like to prioritize the consumption of animal products, of meat, nice, healthy, grass-fed beef, for example. And so I figure a lot of people in the keto community do the same, and I want them to be able to fit it into their daily macronutrient consumption, so that to keep the protein low allows them to do that. Maybe they just need a bit of fat still in their diet. That's usually how I use it, is I need some more fat in my diet. I'll eat my Grapal. But there is no human need for carbohydrate. So keeping that low is not a problem.
So So what do you do
Keto.
to make the stuff you make palatable? For in terms of sweetness and what's like the bulk of the food so that you get mostly fat, but again it tastes good enough to eat.
Yeah. Definitely the fat helps. We don't use butter because at the time when I created the recipes, I was totally dairy free because I was operating on an assumption that I might possibly have a sensitivity to casein, the chief inflammatory milk protein. So I left butter out and put in coconut oil. We use organic extra virgin coconut oil, cold pressed sort of stuff, high quality stuff, and I use that, and then I use a combination of nut butters depending on the flavor. So those are all, of course, palatable, but also the chief sweetener is erythritol, which is. Are you familiar with erythritol at all?
Yeah, I've seen that, and how does that compare for you versus sucralose and other sweeteners, by the way?
Oh, erythritol versus sucralose and other sweeteners? Is that what you said?
Yeah, like why erythritol? Why not sucralose, or why not other sweeteners? What do you like about it?
So while sucralose and aspartame have been shown to not create a significant, if at all, glycemic response in the body, and they certainly don't hold any glycemic load potential. And they also have been showed, which is even more important to me and most people doing the ketogenic diet, they also don't tend to provoke an insulinogenic response. Erythritol does neither of those as well, but it is fully natural. It naturally, technically, it has to be somewhat refined because you aren't just going to find a pile of granulated erythritol, in the woods. But it does come from, we use non-GMO. It comes from corn, and since it is just a constituent of corn, I still consider our products to be grain-free. But erythritol is the most I want to say widely used ketogenic sweetener aside from stevia and monk fruit, but I would just say erythritol, particularly in baking, because it's granulated, so it still allows for a bulk sort of, it's not only taste, but it's functional. It gives bulk to a baked good, whereas if you left it out, you would have a completely different chemical process occurring during the baking. But furthermore, erythritol is, studies have shown that it's naturally occurring in the body, in the human body. And it also seems to have some anti-pathogenic qualities to it. It seems to act on pathogenic bacteria. I don't know how selective or discretionary it is, but I do know that whenever someone has, because there have been reports of people, I don't know if you're familiar, but a lot of times sugar alcohols, which erythritol is a sugar alcohol, they can give people GI distress. And erythritol is known to be the least distressing or the least commonly distressing of them. But when someone does have GI distress as a result of eating erythritol, I usually, my brain, based on the studies I've read, hypothesizes that that person may or may not, but may have a pathogen. And so it may actually be treating that pathogen and causing a bit of a healing crisis or Shimer's reaction. So all the products that we use, all the raw ingredients, most of them tend to be both functional as well as for the sake of the palate. And I want to keep it that way. That's kind of a passion of mine.
Makes sense. So where can people pick up the products? Are they in grocery stores yet, or online only, or where do they get them?
Not yet. Are we in grocery stores? We are not. There are a couple of stores around the country, small brick and mortar locations that we're wholesaling to, and we are open for that if any companies are interested. But we do hope to be in larger chain grocery stores However, at this time, most of our sales are coming through our website, e-commerce.
Gotcha. So what's the next product that you're coming out with? You have the POW granola, and what other products are out there? What's coming soon?
You want to know what's coming next?
If you're able to say it, yeah. What do you have right now? How many different products, and what are they? And then what's coming next? Yeah, if you're able to say.
Oh, we just have the one. Like I said, we just have the one product line that's POW cookie granola, and we have 4 different flavors: the Snickerdoodle, the peanut butter and jelly thumbprint, the salted caramel brownie, and the peanut butter cup. Next, we are attempting to create, I've been working on it all summer, a line of protein cookies. When I say protein cookie, I don't mean high protein to compete with some of the high protein cookies out there, but more just a little bit higher, still within a ketogenic ratio range. But we want to make these cookies a bit higher protein. They will not likely be dairy-free, though I've been working on trying to get them to stay that way. I don't really want to alienate any of our current customer base, and I'm not sure if any of them are dedicated dairy-free, and that's one of the reasons why they can continue to come back to us. But we're working on that, and then there's a few other things that I have in the works. Haven't really been able to play around with recipes yet, but I don't really want to give out those details yet, if that's all right.
Yeah, no problem.
I do want to do some savory things. Hopefully within the next year we'll have a product that's savory and not sweet.
What do you think might be the first savory thing you work on, like a soup or something?
No, since we're a baking company, I wasn't short-sighted when I named the company. I thought really long and hard about, what kinds of things I wanted to do, and I really am set on, I like to create baked goods, so I'm going to likely, I would say that the savory thing is either going to be some kind of a chip or crisp of some kind, or it will be a bread, sort of like an artisanal bread,
Right, gotcha. Is there like a holy grail product that you'd want to make, but that's very difficult to make keto? Or
what type of product?
Like a holy grail one that you really want to make, but you think might be like really hard to make keto friendly.
Oh, I don't really think of things in terms of what I can't do. I tend to think your glass half full, so I guess, okay, I do have an answer to that. I am not a fan of isomalto-oligosaccharide fiber syrup, which is a commonly used. It's found in Quest bars. It's found in other products. I'm not a fan of it personally. I find it to be, from studies that I've read, it tends to be insulinogenic, which is, counteractive. It's antagonistic toward ketone production. So I don't want to use IMO fiber syrup, even though that is kind of like a glue that holds bars together. But I do want to create granola bars as well as, other types of bars. And so that's something I'm looking to potentially get in contact with a food scientist to help me get around that, if that makes sense.
Yeah, gotcha.
I have a couple of ideas of how I could, but I'd like to talk with someone about it first, consult with someone first.
Right. Well, very good. So what's the best way for people to get in touch and find out more?
If people want to get in touch, they can email me at tara@ketobakingco.com. That's TARA@ketobakingco.com. And if they want to check out our products or find out more about the company, they can go to www.ketobakingco.com, as well as our Instagram is is the social media platform that we pay the most attention to, and that is just simply at Keto Baking Co.
Okay. Well, very good. Well, Tara, thanks for being on the podcast, and I appreciate it.
You're welcome. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah.
You have been listening to Almost Here, Around the Corner Future Technology podcast with Richard Jacobs. Subscribe to this podcast, post a review to discover more future technologies that are poised to transform our lives for better or worse, such as Bitcoin, artificial intelligence, 3D printing, blockchain, virtual reality, and more.